Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Cook. I'm the Associate Director of the Asian Studies Center here at the University of Pittsburgh, and I want to welcome all of you to the Chiang Foundation for International Scholarly Exchange 30th Anniversary Lecture Series.
That's right.
On behalf of the Chiang Foundation and the Asian Studies Center at the University of Pittsburgh, I want to welcome all of you to this event. And as you can see, Professor Hsu, you have many, many friends in the audience today. So I see today's event as celebrating three very, very important activities. The first being the critical role of the Chiang Foundation in the promotion of Chinese and Taiwanese studies across North America. The second, the partnership between the Chiang Foundation and the University of Pittsburgh. And thirdly, the important contribution by Professor Cho-yun to all of these activities. On behalf of the University of Pittsburgh, I want to thank Chiang Foundation President Chu Yun-han and other members of the Chiang Foundation North American Advisory Council who have joined us today for participating in these activities and for honoring the University of Pittsburgh and the Asian Studies Center as being one of the three locations selected for the 30th Anniversary Lecture Series. Now, the Chiang Foundation is one of the premier organizations that has molded the development of Chinese and Taiwanese studies in the modern era. Established in 1989, the foundation was initially put together at the behest of Professor Hsu and other American faculty of Chinese descent to bolster the development of Chinese and Taiwanese studies at American universities. Named after former Republic of China President Chiang Kai-shek, the organization has provided thousands of grants to bolster research, conduct conferences, hold seminars, support publications, and most importantly, support, in my opinion, doctoral and postdoctoral research fellowships. I myself have benefited personally and professionally through its China and Inter-Asia Council Small Grants Awards as a young faculty member, and most recently for a CCKF Scholarly Conference Award for a conference on the intersection of colonialism and medicine in East Asia, held here at the University of Pittsburgh just earlier this month with over 20 international scholars in attendance. And I want to personally acknowledge my colleague, Professor Tina Johnson from St. Vincent College, who helped organize that conference. In our audience today is also Mr. Meng Ren. Mr. Ren is one of 6 Chiang doctoral students who have won fellowships here at the University of Pittsburgh within the past 5 years. Thank you very much for your support. Now, additionally, the Chiang Foundation has played a critical role in the development of Chinese and Taiwanese studies here at the University of Pittsburgh. My colleagues will go into much greater detail into how the foundation contributed over $700,000 to the university and its faculty. Suffice it to say, the Asian Studies Center could never have developed into one of the premier centers within the university's renowned University Center for International Studies without its support. Before it became known as a global hub for healthcare, robotics, and other innovative technologies, Pittsburgh was a hard-working steel town. Its connection to the world was essentially molded by this industry. The University Center for International Studies and its committed faculty, including Professor Hsu, Evelyn Rawski, Tom Rawski, Catherine Linduff, and other members of the audience today were an important link to the outside world. Today, we have over 40 faculty who work on Chinese and Taiwanese studies at the university. Our Chinese Studies Library, under the leadership of our East Asian Library head librarian, Zhang Haihui, who I see is in the audience today, has now risen to become the 10th largest Chinese Studies language library in North America. Without the financial support from the Zhang Ching-kuo Foundation, this would not have been possible. Today, our students travel to all parts of Asia, including Taiwan, to engage in cutting-edge research in the humanities, social sciences, engineering, and medicine. And for that, we thank you very, very much. Our Alumni Association in Taiwan is certainly one of the most boisterous, and it sends its thanks as well to the Zhang Ching-kuo Foundation for its support of its alma mater. I want to thank you again for coming today and joining us in this momentous occasion. I would now like to take the opportunity to welcome the Zhang Ching-kuo Foundation President Zhu to the podium. President Zhu is a graduate of the University of Minnesota and a professor of political science at National Taiwan University. He is the author of numerous books analyzing the development of Taiwan and democracy in the region, including Crafting Democracy in Taiwan and Democracy in East Asia, and most recently, the Routledge Handbook of Democratization in East Asia. If you could please join me in welcoming him to the podium. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Professor James Cook for his very kind and generous opening remark. I'm so delighted to be here today. Pittsburgh really is a very special place. I would say unique in many ways when it comes to not just the founding of the Zhang Ching-kuo Foundation for International Scholarly Exchange, but also over the year for its smooth operation. The foundation was established on January 13th, 1989. So we are approaching our 30th anniversary. And so this year we launched this 30th anniversary lecture series. And today's event is the very first one. So this event will kick off quite a few other events that are due to take place this year, and some of them will take place next year. In April, we'll have also a very important event at Prague, at Charles University. And then after that, we'll have an event at Tübingen University, and then also at Glasgow, in conjunction with the European Association of Chinese Study biannual conference. And also in October, we will have also part of a lecture series taking place at Harvard, the Fairbanks Center. And then last event for this year will take place in St. Petersburg in conjunction with the 200th anniversary of the Institute for Oriental Manuscript of St. Petersburg. But Pittsburgh is the first. I can tell you so many reasons why, but one of the important background of the birth of our foundation, to the best of my knowledge, that Professor Cho-yun is one of the founding fathers. And I believe that the concept of setting up such a grand-making foundation was conceived probably right here. So in a way, Pittsburgh is the cradle of this foundation that I've been affiliated with, for the last 19 years. It's very, really, I take a lot of pride in being able to associate with the foundation and also working with for so many prominent scholars like Professor Xu. They have made tremendous contribution in the fostering of the next generation Chinese scholar, not just in the United States, but also around the world. We always conceive ourselves not just a grant-making foundation, we are a partner. We are a partner here there to work with the Chinese study community and Taiwanese study community. We have very limited resources, but nevertheless we try to allocate our resources gingerly, strategically, and also we also have, the fortune that we have the guidance and wisdom from many of the prominent scholars who are actually with us today. They serve on our review panel. We have 4 review panels that help us to, pick the best proposal among so many applicants each year. And also I want to share with you that for the last 10 years, our review panelists for the North America, they all flew here from different parts of this country to do our review panel meeting in Pittsburgh. So I'm so delighted that, we have this occasion, and I also want to express my heartfelt thanks to the Asian Study Center and also to the Vice Provost in Armony for co-hosting this very symbolically and substantively very important event. I am sure that my board director, my colleague, in Taipei, they will be very eager to watch the video. Today's event will be video recorded, and eventually they will put up on our website, for the, to benefit so many other audience and colleagues around the world. So without further ado, I also going to introduce our keynote speaker today. Professor Cho-yun, I really need no introduction, but I have to say a few words about him, based on my personal experience and also my encounter. First of all, he has photographic memory. She just told me, about 15 minutes ago, where we met for the first time. I have to say that, in many ways, although, he might not feel the same way, I regard him as one of my mentors. I've learned so much from him. I would come to, his desk or his phone number for consultation. He's, one of the key founding members for establishing this foundation, but not only that, also the key guidance, source of guidance, for setting up all those internal procedures that guarantee that the foundation will use its limited resources in the most effective way, and also that we will stand by the principle of academic freedom under all kinds of circumstances. We only pick the most promising proposal entirely on basis of scholarly merit. I think, he really has been able to, in the past, actually stood up to very different pressures, which do not always agree with the principle, and the rule I just referred to. This is really my honor and my distinct privilege today, here to be part of this event. And also, one more time, we will learn from Professor Cho-yun for his wisdom and vision. Yeah. So, Professor Xu. Yeah.
Thank you. My hosts, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, here I have really all colleagues, PIS colleagues and CCK colleagues, and some of them are academic cynical colleagues. So triple status here. Thank you very much to attend this ceremony to celebrate the 30th anniversary of CCK Foundation. When we first have this idea of choosing a place at Pittsburgh to celebrate the 30th anniversary. In Chinese, the 30th anniversary is 30立. One can stand upright until 30. Now, so with the 30立 ceremony here, so Pittsburgh really, by coincidence, is a place where the idea of such a foundation was first time conceived and discussed in my small bungalow along Schenley Avenue. By that time, 1984, the then newly appointed Minister of Education, Li Huan, took a trip to the United States and stopped my house to discuss a few things he thinks he needs to discuss with me. So first he mentioned that Taiwan is rich now. I said, I know that. By 80s, you have about 500 billion foreign reserve. Yes. And he said, so we can do something as we want. That's fine. Okay, what do you want me to do? He said, could you give me some ideas as an education department is concerned? What is most important as a set of foundation for international promotion of Chinese studies? That's the first thing. And then I elaborate to him a kind of reminder to him. You know, I'm not a KMT member. He was a very important guy in KMT, Kuomintang. So I say, you remember Taiwan was total isolation in the 50s. And it was not because of party government. It is in spite of party government. We, academic cynical people, first made a breakthrough to reconnect with the outside world. You feel embarrassed. I don't feel embarrassed. We're all Chinese anyway. So by that time, I told him Taiwan upgraded its economy every decade, 60, 70, 80. By 1960, Dr. Hu Shi and my mentor Li Ji and Wang Shijie, all academic city members, they say that we cannot forever suffocated in Taiwan. We got to find some way re-engage with the outside world, especially with our academic world. So Dr. Hu Shi was in New York. He got George Taylor's help to call a meeting in Seattle for collaboration between Taiwan's Chinese Academic Circle and the Chinese Studies Circle in the United States. And Fairbank immediately responded, so we have a large group there. By that time, 1960, I was in Chicago already. I left Taiwan for my advanced education. All of a sudden, I received a phone call from Taiwan. Li Ji said, Cho-yun, next week, go to Seattle. Okay, I said, so what's about? He said, you'll be the reporter of humanities for this meeting. I was 30 years old, so I flew over there. That's the beginning of our meeting with outside world, first time. Dr. Hu Shi brought a whole group of scholars from Taiwan. And in the United States, major universities, Chinese studies heads, all gathering there. That was the first time we told them we needed to reconnect with the schools and the important institutes, such as ACLCSRC, the current president right here now, such as National Academy of Science, and so on. So after that meeting, immediately we did have that connection started. And that beginning, Taiwan really had outside contact. Otherwise, all diplomats couldn't do anything because everybody, the United States was divided between the McCarthyists and the Democrats. Very badly divided. Not much better than today. Today, the United States divided again, you know, blue and red. That also blue and red by that time. Were anti-red and blue, anti-red and That's right. Okay, so that's first kind of thing. I told him, don't take a party as a party government is normal. That's abnormal. We must return to normalcy. Of course, he was pretty shocked that I lectured him on this. But that gave him really something to think twice. So later he gradually converted his mind. Now then I told him, from that time to 84, the reason Taiwan could have economic takeoff was turning point was 3 economists from Cornell and elsewhere, Liu Dazhong, Jiang Shuojie, Fei Jinghan. I think everyone probably remember these 3 persons. The Cornell economic department. They invited by academic Seneca to give Chiang Kai-shek a lecture, the whole day lecture from morning to afternoon. Told him economy is something you cannot suffocate it with anything. No isolationism can do it. No manipulator of foreign currency can do that. No restriction of free thinking can do that. Nothing anything beyond or short of free, open market could do anything. Chiang Kai-shek listened to that. So, okay. Then gathered a group of people who were technocrats, very capable technocrats, no party members. So economists, technocrats, and academic Seneca groups, with 3 sides work together. Well, economists also part of academic Seneca. By that time, in the 65 and 67, laid on the whole blueprint how to develop. The latest thing is history. Every year, every 10 years, escalated to one level. Mainly by mobilized Chinese scholars, Chinese engineers, and the Chinese some wealthy persons here too. Help Taiwan. Laid on a strategy. Government only provided infrastructure. Government carved out some place called a free tax zone. And government later on signed some land as science industrial park. And then lifted changed the foreign currency rate, single rate, floating up and down freely, foreign market. No more official rate or black market rate. And reduce all the restrictions to minimum, let it all free. That's the reason, gradually, step by step, with the help of many, many Chinese scholars and engineers in the United States to make Taiwan's industrialization, passing 3 stages, took off. Took off by 80s, and then right now we know that Taiwan now shrink, but by the 90s it was peak. It had 900 billion foreign currency reserve. And the Taiwan General Society opened up. Democracy replaced the party rule. So here we can see that economy indeed determined the politics. It's not the other way around. And the society and the economy go together, side by side, hand to hand together. That's Taiwan's early history. So Li Huan listened to that. So now you gave me almost a 2 hours lecture. What else? I said, set of foundation. Okay. So I said, I cannot give you any proposal now. Give me 1 year. Next year, 85, in Association for Asian Studies meeting, I'll gather signatures. 85, I gather about a couple dozen signatures. 86, I brought back home. to submit it to the then Li Huan no more in education. It's our current chairman at foundation, Mao, who was the Minister of Department of Education. And that by that time, about to proceed to establish that. And also we have a very good help without invitation, come automatically himself. David Dean, American representative in Taiwan, separately from our petition, sent his proposal, recommendation. So in other words, he endorsed our effort. This immediately moved forward very rapidly. But then Ching-kuo passed away. After Ching-kuo passed away, Li Huan called a meeting, say, we do not want to raise a statue to keep Ching-kuo in memory, because every statue could be torn down. No more memorial hall, that also can be changed name. And he predicted correctly. Let's make this foundation, Ching-kuo Foundation. No one can tear down a foundation which operates with good reason and a good cause and honestly. That's what we are. That's where we get his name and we start this. Okay, now, as I said, don't forget, don't need to watch that outline because I don't have that here. It's somehow missing here. I just speak from my head, okay? The larger still follow the outline though. Reason we can mobilize so many Chinese scholars in the United States to work for us. They could not go back to Taiwan, there's no job for them to work. They stay here in their job, work in many capacities. They returning to Taiwan, group by group, in one group after group, serve as a consultant, as an advisory, give summer institutes to revive some lost time, institutionalize some group, and all these, all academic groups, such as Li Fenggui, really restarted linguistic studies in Taiwan, when all the important linguistic philologists stay in mainland China. They move, and he is the only one, and Cho-yun both in the United States. So Li Fenggui went back to Taiwan 3 times to reorganize whole field, and started from Chomsky's model. Very different from mainland model already. This is one case, such as Pitt C.C. Lee Medical School, the founding father of biostatistics. He returned to Taiwan, started training a whole group of statisticians, and then joined with macroeconomists like George Jiao of Chicago to get all the different field of statistics reinstalled. These are 2 cases. Pitt also is one of the ground for our medical doctors rotating here to refresh their memory, their trainings. They either take sabbatical or semi-sabbatical to Pitt to receive training. One case interesting, my own doctor, my mother's doctor, and my own doctor, 2 generations. My mother doctor has 6 sons. Currently he is very big bad guy now. Cho-yun, who come from Taiwan, knows that. he was first a minister of public health in Taiwan. He got his PhD here. His father was C.C. Lee's student. And Wenda's son, Jason, 2 years ago got his PhD here, 3 generation Pitt. And all connected with this with the academic synagogue. See, Wenda virtually is academicians, consultant doctors, every academician returning Taiwan for meeting, their annual meetings. Everybody became his patient. So this kind of cases, I use Pitt as an example. Many universities can claim that way too. Hundreds of these people helped Taiwan to design this, planning this, re-import modern world science, modern world technology to Taiwan. They could do that. It's something, I think, very special feature in Chinese culture. That is, my good friend Tom said, connection. Connection is a Lingnan called a social capital, a network. Chinese scholars from 2,000 years ago, academic world, learned field, had its own network. That network was so strong, so everlasting, changing dynasty won't be able to break it. Foreign invasion won't be able to break it. And that network maintained China's repeatedly falling down and re-rise. When they need help, anybody in this big circle respond. And there's no rule to write. It's an unwritten constitution. Only rule is academic honesty and try to use knowledge to serve people. Try to use culture as per knowledge to reach others. We reach Japan by educating Japanese students in Tang Dynasty. We reach Central Asia. From there to welcome Buddhism from Central Asia to China. So this is when I switch from the third section, my discussion with Li Huan. And finally, I also told in that organization conference, organization committee, I said, the reason we want to use the Jiang Jingguo Foundation as a cultural foundation operating overseas is not for cultural aggression or invasion. It's want to make the world share with us what we had developed, put all these 2,000 or 3,000 years efforts to make this culture a solid and it could be and also flexible, but it repeatedly absorb outside elements, outside factors. Buddhism is enriched by that, enriched from Confucianism. Central Asia's mechanism also enriched Chinese folk religions. Christian, Catholic, and Protestant in the 19th century, in the 16th, 17th centuries, Catholics enriched the Chinese mind, worked together with Neo-Confucianism, brought into birth Wang Yaming. And one of the best Catholic theologians, Teilhard de Chardin, a paleontologist, worked in Beijing all his life. And Vatican didn't like him. He's more Chinese than Vatican now. So they did not like him to speak. They muffled him for 20 years from giving lectures. But He is the best theologian in Catholicism. So this kind of cultural interflow and mutual enrichment should take place again. Not only let things flow along papers, but writings, but in the future should go along the current cultural information science routes to make the world share with us. Now we are especially needed in this part of the world, United States and Euro-America. I think all of us noted that in the recent decade, especially recent 5 years, and specifically in the recent 2 years. Drastic change, not only here, but also Europe. Our White House is occupied by somebody who should not be there. And in Europe, you can see one after another. And in Latin America, one after another. And a similar kind of people holding power. Because, in my mind, any culture had a cycle of a peak and a valley. Anything in Chinese concept, once reached the peak, we're gradually going down here. We reached the peak by 80s. United States reached the peak after World War II. And then by 80s, we really reached the top peak. But our economy after 80 declined gradually. We barely hang in there, not falling further. And European, Second World War weakened Europe. Never recovered exactly. China declined to the bottom, to Mao Zedong's time. Mao Zedong tried to ruin this huge intellectual network. And all the thought and all the culture carried by the great network. But he died. His killing did not destroy us. Our second generation, third generation bounces back now in the mainland China. Xi Jinping is calling for revival, restoration of a Chinese culture. His idea is right, his tactics wrong. But he noted that without this, China won't be able to survive. That part was correct. So, 春风野火烧不尽，春风吹又生。Chinese word, the prairie can be burned off completely by the fire. When spring comes back, the prairie comes green again. So that's the reason we want to have another culture, global culture, globalization as the economy, but also more important globalization of the economy, the globalization of culture. The world has been better divided long enough between socialist camp and capitalist camp. Now capitalist camp itself divided inside. Social camp broken. We cannot afford to have further broken, further hostility, and especially the recent decades terrorism ever since our 9/11, right? We ever lived under the shadow of terrorism. And the poor Islams, they don't know that they walk deeper and deeper into destruction, into all their self-destruction. It's not self-salvation, self-destruction. But the world should not be like that way. in the whole world ever since we have a human civilization, passing the days of just feeding ourselves. There's a number of clusters, culture, rising and falling. And then finally, major blocks today, European America, that we call it the Western culture and the Eastern culture. Eastern part of India and China. These three. Western, in between there's Middle East, that is Islam, so Muslims. All there are these blocks. And there's something in between, like say, Orthodoxy, which is not very strong anymore. Catholic, which is not very strong, well, still strong. It's only these blocks. These blocks should not live forever in separation. They should share with each other. And among all these, allow me to say one word. The monotheism, exclusive faith, all carried on a mentality of exclusion. This exclusive-mindedness is not good for absorption, not for observation, not for absorption, not for digestion, not for conversion and not convergence. In my own personal research field, I'm an ancient historian. From Neolithic carried to Han Dynasty. I spent much time on Neolithic time. And I could trace all these hundreds of little cultural squares gradually converged into a few local cultures. Local cultures gradually converged into about 5 or 6 larger cultures, regional cultures. And then finally, each of these 7 or 6 blocks copied from each other and eventually unified it into a Chinese culture. And that Chinese culture, with such a huge body, huge mass of population, and such wealth of content, it's very natural for it to convert nearby cultures, the southwest, southeast of the Yangtze River, and also reach south of reach north, and reach Japan, reach Korea, reach Vietnam. And also carried on by Chinese immigrants, made Chinese communities in Southeast Asia one of the largest prominent community. This, because Chinese culture is not a kind of monotheistic, as therefore not exclusive. China is ready to receive, ready to accept, ready to absorb. And we wish other people do that too. American culture, today's crisis, is misinterpret liberalism and freedom into individualism. Individualism is we're breaking down whole large mass population, great society into blocks divided, further divided into, say, city and inland, suburb and downtown, upper class, lower class, white and other colors, rich and poor, and so on and so forth. Yes, China had classes, China stratifications, but no great family can last for more than 3 generations. Why in the United States? This is an open society, free mobility, yet Boston Brahmin, still there. Still behind all the large fund, Golden Sachs, whatever, Bank of America, whatever, largest, Lowe's, Perkins, all these names still there. Rockefeller, and the Roosevelt are later joiners. They joined later. The New York Brahmin, not Boston Brahmins. Just different. You ever see any Rockefeller really stopped on the street? No. But in China, so many impure descendants end up back on the street. Because this, by individualism, you tend to close in. You will not join others. When China was networking, try to reach out to connect, the world needed to connect, not to separate, not to break away. I always said, oxygen and hydrogen put together, big water. Water is great. The whole world, the best solution is water, right? Hydrogen flying freely, harder to combine. Oxygen always two atoms joined together, coupled up. And the oxygen, hydrogen become together. Water can bring all things together. So my wish is, in a time, this time, to next century this time, the world there are no more so many blocks, no more so many hegemony, no more leading powers. The whole world is a whole common world. And this is the reason I want to speak today. But then move to the last part. What the next assignment of Chiang-kuo? Chiang-kuo had done a great deal. I don't want to repeat what Yunhan could speak more better than I do. Chiang-kuo had in the 30 years. We only sit here, receive and accept applications. We judge their quality and give based on their merits to the best ones. We don't make lines what we want. But the message is Yunhan. In the future, we choose one particular part, give us some level of special slots. If cultural studies, we may have one box reserved for certain applications. Comparison and interaction. Interaction between and among cultures. Comparison of cultures as a project. Group studies, conferences, workshops, or individual projects, or PhD dissertation, whatever. Only when this kind of thing happens, then we can really bring the attention of a gigantic American academic world to do something beyond the blocks called mainstay and the regional studies, area studies, foreign studies. We want to have the study, the cultural studies period as human cultures. So doing more on comparison and interactions will make us more and more alert, more and more prepared to do better things, promoting unification of human culture as per se. this thing, only all of us work together. And I wish ACLC, SRC think seriously on this, my recommendation. Pauline, would you please bring my message to your colleagues? This will be better than any preparation for national glory, national whatever, China first, Japan first, American first, whatever. No country, no culture can be forever first. The only thing should be first is human society. And we'll be prepared. Soon, alien coming over. They're competing us. We better unite it. Until, otherwise, we be extinguished like other animals. We humans had made many animals extinguished. We shall not be extinguished items, species. Now, the last line in my presentation will be my suggestion, Pitt. I've taught in Pitt ever since 1930. I think in this room, probably I'm the oldest guy now. I'm 88. When I joined Pitt together, same year as Evelyn. Evelyn was here 1 year earlier than I did, right? But Evelyn was a young girl. And Michelle, I saw Michelle even younger. Okay. So I've been here long enough. Pittsburgh is my second home. Here I have my son and my grandson all here. Now I like to have Pitt take up one more job. We mentioned division of the United States. Recently, we re-elected our own replacement of a congressman. You see the picture of the newspaper. Red and green, red and blue, so sharply different. Where's blue? Allegheny with deep blue city. That's it. Outside all red. These two different colors choose different people. Only 700 tickets apart in about, say, 30,000. That red parts of land, in my personal view, they lack communication with us. Responsibly, we do not reach them. We have not made an effort to reach them. They are one of us. We drink milk from the farm. We get everything in the market from the delivery persons, step by step, the drivers, the packages, the packers, and we do not reach them. We have not reached them yet. Their knowledge on international affairs, their knowledge on today's world is very, very different from ours. I can tell you many stories me and the wife encountered. Not very far. You go to Altoona on the street. I think there's one girl here from Altoona. You'll find that people do not really know where is Thailand, where is Taiwan. I'm often being said, you come from Thailand, as a Taiwan. May I suggest that, as I told Ariel already, I suggest that Pitt operate a summer institute to bring high school teachers, and first to collaborate with colleges, universities in outskirt areas, bring their very lonely colleagues of ours who very likely be the only person who are teaching on Asia. My students who taught around often told me he or she is the only person on the whole other side of the world. We should operate some kind of summer institute, not only Chinese studies, but for one item after another, to bring these lonesome brother systems back here for refresh, as a reminder to us that who needs help, what kind of help. We let us share with them our library facilities. I know our library Hai Hui, do a wonderful job. And if you can help Hai Hui increase some budget for her, okay? Because if her users are not only Pitt, but also many other people, she deserves better budget and better staff. So this library will be the only library, right now it's the only library in this area, which is not part of Midwest, not part of Northeast. We are somewhere nowhere. I call it here, we are Yumenguan. We are Tianshan Nanlu. Somewhere in between, you know. This in-between area is a big triangle. Lakes, southbound gradually narrow down into mountain areas, Appalachian. This big triangle, pretty much empty. We are the only one with good library. We're the only one with 40 persons on Asian studies. So we have responsibility, duty to do that. Summer institute and also summer school for high school teachers. Summer institute for scholars and their graduate students. Summer schools for high school teachers. I'm sure you three directors of us could do that, backing our education department, cough out some money, help us. And if we can knock door of Mellon's, not of Carnegie, Carnegie will have money anymore, Carnegie will have earmarked. Mellon still have money. And Hillman spent quite a lot for us. We probably should not knock their door anymore. Mellon should be able to help. And Google's here. Ask Google to call for money. Okay. All right, so this is my presentation. My wife repeatedly told me that, don't talk too much. I said, yes. So I'm always very obedient to my wife. Especially today, my son strengthened my wife's will. My wife, Daddy, don't talk too much. So I obey both of them, both my beloved one. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Xu, for your truly inspiring and illuminating lecture. Yeah, some water, yes. In response to what you have just laid out, the way that the CCK Foundation and the University of Pittsburgh might work together in the near future, I want to say that your wish is my command. Now I would like to invite our speaker for this symposium this afternoon. And our first speaker is Professor Ariel Armony. He's a very distinguished political scientist, my fellow political scientist. in his own right. He has published many, many important works on Latin America. And he also wearing very important hats, serving this great university in two capacity as the Vice Provost for Global Affairs, and also concurrently the Director of the Institute for International Study. So please come to podium and share with your wisdom and insight. Thank you. Yeah.
President Xu, Professor Xu, Director of the Asian Studies Center, Professor Alter, distinguished speakers and guests. It is a great pleasure to be here this afternoon celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Chiang-kuo Foundation, and also celebrating together because, as the sign indicates, we are also starting to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the University Center for International Studies. So it's fantastic to be able to have the opportunity to celebrate together. I want to say a few words about Professor Xu, who taught at Pitt for 18 years. Before joining Pitt, he was a faculty member at the National Taiwan University, having received his PhD at the University of Chicago. During his time at Pitt, he played a critical role in bringing the university and the CCK Foundation together to spearhead educational and research initiatives in Chinese and Taiwan studies. The University Center for International Studies is particularly proud of the award-winning curriculum project on teaching Chinese studies at the undergraduate level. Contemporary Chinese Societies, Continuity and Change came out in 2001. At the time developed in CD-ROM, it represented a new technology and an important tool for understanding Chinese history and culture. Michelle Hereford, who's here, headed the project, and the foundation provided nearly $300,000 for the project. It brought together many of the faculty sitting today in this room, Evelyn and Tom Rawski, Cecil Sun, Kathy Lindlof, and many others. And they developed this innovative teaching tool together. This put Pitt on the map for Chinese studies and made us a center for undergraduate teaching, which we are proud of today. There were many other ways in which the CCK Foundation worked with the University of Pittsburgh, supporting conferences, library support, and faculty position, as well as training students. And very significant research took place in Taiwan. I want to draw from Professor Xu's wonderful remarks a point about values in Chinese culture, in the Chinese culture system, as they supplement and complement shortages in Western culture's values. Particularly significant is the constant search for equilibrium in Chinese culture. These notions of complementarity and especially equilibrium are essential to sustain true partnerships. And this is what we are celebrating this afternoon. I also want to say that I fully endorse Professor Xu's proposed agenda. I think that it is extremely important that we reach out to residents outside of Pittsburgh, to the outskirts areas, in order to expand and work with them in terms of international studies, particularly Chinese studies, but as Professor Su says, in a global context. The idea of the Summer Institute for Teachers and Scholars, I think, is an extraordinary idea, and I hope that we can work together in making it a reality. And I also want to say that the reference to the library is very important, and I'm very, very happy that our new director of the university library system is a strong believer in the importance of having these wonderful collections that we have at Pitt. That is at a time in which many libraries are shifting away from that kind of emphasis. The University of Pittsburgh is putting even more resources into this extraordinary resource. So we are a place that is committed to a future in which the area of Chinese studies will continue to blossom and develop. I want to conclude my remarks by sharing with you a very wonderful, very wonderful document that we received. And this is a certificate of recognition from the 23rd Legislative District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let me read it to you. Let it be known that Dr. Cho-yun Su, on this memorable occasion of celebrating Dr. Su's lifelong dedication to the advancement of Asian studies in the international arena, and as the most widely recognized historian of Asian China in the United States, is deserving of honor and recognition for this event. Therefore, Representative Dan Frankler, 23rd District of Pennsylvania, extends sincerest congratulations and best wishes for success in the future. March 30th, 2018, signed by Honorable Dan Frankel, 23rd Legislative District, County of Allegheny, Pennsylvania House of Representatives.
Thank you. Leo, help me. Thank you, receive for me, okay. I can't hold it, let my son Leo for me. Leo receive for me. Thank you very much. It's a really great honor. And it's a surprise. Surprise. Thanks.
And before our next speaker, we have a small gifts.
Thank you.
For Professor Xu.
Oh, thank you.
The gift.
Oh, thank you very much. I did not expect these honors. Thank you.
President Xu.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You shouldn't have. Fortunately, I didn't come here empty-handed. I also have a small gift. We brought it all the way from Taiwan as a token of gratitude.
Thank you.
This is the High Mountain green tea. It was grown, at Lishan, which is the really the best spot to grow green tea. Almost I can say that it's probably the best tea in Funny Campus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Armony. We appreciate your remarks, and I will also relay our thanks to Representative Frankel for the certificate for Professor Hsu. It is now my pleasure to invite Professor Thomas Rawski to the podium. Professor Rawski, of course, is Professor Emeritus of Economics and History at the University of Pittsburgh and one of the foremost authorities on the economic development of China. Today he will be talking about Creating Chinese Studies, a Zhang Ching-kuo Foundation, University of Pittsburgh partnership. Please join me in welcoming Professor Rawski.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, see a lot of old friends. And there's some history here involving myself. I was discussing with Cho-yun before we started, when exactly did the two of us meet? And even though Cho-yun is alleged to have a photographic memory, we couldn't figure it out. Was it the summer of 1966 in the stacks at the Harvard Yenjing Library, or was it the summer of 1967? We don't know. If any of you have better information, we'd welcome your help. And then Cho-yun mentioned the Cornell economists who were instrumental in moving Taiwan into a completely new development path, which has influenced economies all over the world, not least the Chinese economy. I mean, Cho-yun talked about tax-free zones and so on. That's exactly what the Chinese did several decades later. And I should say that I, too, am a Cornell economist. And I was an undergraduate at Cornell while this was taking place, except that, unfortunately, I didn't know about it. Even though I was very interested in Taiwan, the first research paper I ever wrote was about land reform in Taiwan. But I think that I do deserve to be recognized as the Hodai of these people at Cornell because of one episode that occurred in the spring of 1965. They had oral examinations for honors students. And I had the oral examination on a very hot day. I'm sitting in this room and I remember the sweat trickling down my back. There was no air conditioning. And the problem was that they were examining me on the contents of one of the basic courses, which I didn't take. And the reason I didn't take it was I said, they have some boring textbook. I will learn this myself, and you will allow me to have independent study, and they did. And then these people came and examined me on the basics for this regular course, which I had great difficulty in answering. But finally, I blurted out the right answer. Everybody relaxed visibly, and just to paper over the discomfort resulting from my poor performance, Professor Liu Dazhong said, "Does economic theory apply to China?" And I said no, because I had read a book by Gunnar Myrdal, the Swedish Nobel laureate, which said that economic theory did not apply to underdeveloped regions. Yes, you've read the book, you know about it. I have very little recollection of what followed, except that my part of the ensuing conversation consisted of saying, "Yes, sir," very frequently. And when they finally unleashed me from that room, I ran to the library to apply economic theory to China. And my early work, in part, consisted of essentially ridiculing things that were written by Professor Liu Dazhong. And I said to him that if he didn't like this, he should bear in mind that it was all the result of my effort to follow his advice to apply economic theory to China. So that is the personal aspect here. I would like, again, to thank the foundation for the support that it's given to our program over the years. Of course, there have been a number of grants to individual researchers in many fields and to individual conferences, but let me just point to three major items of support that we've received over the years. Two of them I think of as field development projects. One is the module that was already mentioned by Professor Armony. And we not only produced this module for which we won a prize and I think has had considerable influence. But the process had considerable influence on us internally. And I think if I feel carefully here, there will be some bumps that are probably the result of having my head banged together with other heads on the faculty by this gentleman who's sitting here on my left to get this project done. And in fact, we invented some good management methods in doing this. One of them, perhaps this was my idea, how to get everybody to do their share on time. And what we invented was the unnecessary meeting. So the idea was you have 6 people in a room, and each of whom has to write something. And the question is, when is it going to get done? And so the idea was we agree on a date, and everybody signs up for this date. And the agreement is that if the materials are not delivered, if somebody fails to deliver, we have to have a meeting, which nobody wanted. And this really worked. I mean, I remember sitting at my desk and thinking, I am not going to have lunch until I have written this part of the module. So this had external effects, but also beneficial internal effects. I mean, now in the football, they're worried about concussions and so on, but we weren't worried about this then, and we did get the job done. So it was probably okay. Secondly, I'd like to emphasize the support of the library, because here again, the library is a resource that is not just useful to us internally. And someone, I don't remember, said we are the 10th largest library. Yes, and no doubt this is true, but as we were taught some years ago by one of our former library directors, the best library in the future will not be the one with the most books. It will be the one with the best access. And we've been working on that principle ever since. So we'll never have the most books, because other libraries were there decades before we were. But in terms of access, I think we do very, very well indeed. And that access benefits a lot of people, not only people on this campus. And our success in expanding access is due in no small part to the support of the foundation. And thirdly, I would like to point to the foundation's key role in creating our position in Buddhist studies. The faculty wanted to do this. The faculty persuaded the dean that we could do this, but the condition was we had to provide 3 years of support for the position. And my private thought is that the dean thought we couldn't do that. And he says, get us out of here. But we did do it, again, thanks to the foundation. And it's most unfortunate that the initial occupant of that position is not here to join us in celebrating this occasion. But the position continues, and this is really a permanent endowment on this university that we owe to the foundation. And the last thing I'd like to say is to think back about the response of people in the China Studies field to the creation of this foundation. And I must tell you, people were worried about this. You know. They're thinking, here comes this crew of people with a ton of money. They have more money than the ACLS. They have more money than the Social Science Research Council. And people are afraid that these outsiders would come here and start pushing us around. And that's not what happened. And of course now the situation is repeating itself. I'm on the board of the Association for Asian Studies. We had our board meeting last week. And one of the items on the agenda, and not for the first time, is the question of the Confucius Institutes. And my thought is that, again, we have an outside group with a lot of money and so on, and people are worried that these outsiders, as we were worried about your group, are going to come in and start pushing people around. And my thought is that the operating model that we've seen from your organization over the past 30 years, which essentially is work to develop the field, support good projects, and manage your affairs, leaving other people to manage their affairs, That's the way to do this. And I hope that subsequent arrivals will behave in similar fashion. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to invite our third speaker for the symposium, Professor Pauline Yu. Professor Yu, she is a very accomplished scholar of Chinese literature, and she has taught at Minnesota, my alma mater, Columbia, UCLA, and she was the Dean of Humanity of UCLA for many, many years before she was appointed to her current very, prominent appointment as the President of American Council of Learning Society. She's also a member of American Academy of Art and Science, and also she served on many, many important board of different foundation, endowment. The last but not least, she also served on our board of director, the CCK Foundation. We are very fortunate that she can offer her expertise, her insight and wisdom, helping the foundation to charter forward on the right course. Believe it or not, out of her very busy schedule, Pauline flew to Taipei twice a year, took part in our board meeting religiously, and also she flew here once a year for our North American Review panel meeting. So I really, want to use the occasion to express my gratitude to Pauline. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Pauline. Yeah.
That was a very generous introduction, and I thank you for that. I feel in many ways that this is kind of a family affair for me. It's great to see so many old friends here and new ones, and also to think about the work of a foundation which for me really has a very deep family connection. I'm sure some of you know that my father, Paul, had the privilege of serving both Chiang Ching-kuo and his father as a physician, and I guess many of the other members of the Taiwan government. And he considered that an honor to be called in the service of a country in which he saw such great potential. And every time I've met with Professor Xu over the years at AAS meetings or whatever, he would always ask, "How's your mom?" And I was always very grateful to him that was the first thing that came to his mind. She passed last year at 100, and I've been going through her effects over the course of the past year, and I came across a small calligraphy from Chiang Ching-kuo to my father, wow, which I didn't know that she had. So it's it's a small treasure. Junhan just mentioned my academic odyssey from one institution to another, and Professor Xu's remarks prompted me to recall one story that I think illustrates in a sort of comical way why the work of the foundation is so important. Jim, you'll remember at UC Irvine the great French theorists who graced the faculty of Irvine and brought the wisdom of European theory to the study of literature. And I was at dinner with one of those theorists one evening, having arrived from New York, from Columbia, where I'd been teaching, to California, and this was, I think, in 1989. And he looked at me very soulfully and said, you must miss New York very much. And I must admit, Orange County in 1989 was not like Manhattan. I mean, good reasons and bad reasons. But I was curious why he thought I should miss New York. And so I asked him, and he said, because you're now so much farther away from China. He was French. The world goes through Paris, right? It was a long way from Orange County to Paris and to China, and it just never occurred to him. Ken, of course, I think I've told you this story. This demonstrated to me that there was still a lot of work to be done. So I think we can celebrate the fact that that we now have 30 years of the good work of the Jiang Jingguo Foundation to both to celebrate and to reflect on. The vision, the values, its achievements are all things that we want to commend, but I think because the values that we celebrate are grounded in scholarship, it's also important to reflect on how and why the foundation has been able to accomplish as much as it has. And I think Professor Xu's remarks have guided us even as it inspires us to further achievements in the future. I think there were 4 things that stood out for me in his presentation, and I'll place them under very large headings: history, scholarship, philanthropy, and globalization. History is a logical starting point. We have a lot of history of China to explore, document, and interpret. And curation is a word that's much in vogue these days, but it does suggest the importance of preserving, of presenting, and caring for something that is particularly prized and distinctive. The notions at the core of the foundation of the Jiang Jingguo Foundation were that Taiwan had a mandate for the curation of knowledge of Chinese history and civilization, and that the Jiang Jingguo Foundation could be a vehicle for both that curation of Chinese studies and for the closer integration of Taiwan into a larger international scholarly community. Now, second, as it embarked on this grand project, the Jiang Jingguo Foundation wisely grounded its work in the tested processes of independent scholarship, rigorous scholarship. And in so doing, the foundation has engaged in the curation not just of knowledge itself, but of its means of production. The foundation carefully developed partnerships, as we've heard, with key institutions. And I'm honored that the American Council of Learned Societies has been one of those partners. In a moment, I'll say a little bit more about our joint work, for which I'm so grateful. But at this point, I just want to underline the importance of the CCK Foundation's recognition that fundamental knowledge needs to be created, produced, nurtured, and that peer review is an essential component in the support of scholarship with its partners and directly by the foundation itself, because peer review assures the quality, the independent rigor of the projects supported, but is also the means by which scholarly communities can chart their future directions and identify their future leaders. So third, this is a way in which the CCK Foundation has really been an exemplary philanthropy at a time when so many foundations are moving away from the support of scholarship as such, of hands-free support, of higher education in general. The number of foundations that now directly support higher education and allow higher education to do what it wants to do rather than using higher education as a means to promote its agenda is a very diminishing group. It's not easy to be a philanthropy. I have a colleague who has done his work in the history of American philanthropies, and he loves to tell the story about how, certainly at the very beginning, American foundations found it really hard to give money away. And people were just difficult. How do you set your priorities? And apparently one foundation officer is quoted as saying that, well, let's just give the money to this guy and tell him to go to hell. But I'm happy to say this is not how the CCK Foundation behaves. University of Pittsburgh has benefited. University of California at Irvine, when I was there, received money for a new professorial position. And I think certainly we know how deliberative and how fair the foundation's own decision-making is. When the foundation began with a focus on exchange between Taiwan and North America, it very quickly, and I think wisely, broadened its reach to Europe. And we've heard about the many centers that it supported, and as well as supporting work throughout the wider Asia-Pacific region. This is, I think, an acknowledgement that the world not only is wide, but that the relations among its components are never static. Cultures and civilizations don't exist in splendid isolation. They evolve through mutual interaction, and I think the Foundation's programs apply this insight not just to China's complex history, but to transnational academic relations today, illustrating Professor Hsu's important point about globalization, to which I will return at the very end. I think one of the things that's important to note is that the Foundation has not only evolved, recognized the way fields of knowledge need to be developed, but that methods of scholarship also evolve. And one of the greatest transformations since it began has been the application of digital technologies to research and publication. And I think the CCK Foundation has made very wise strategic investments in this area. As I noted, ACLS has been honored to have been a partner with the Foundation since its very early years. Tom mentioned the fact that the Foundation entered on the scene at a moment when people were very suspicious of what its resources might enable. I was on we were both, I think, on the China committee of the ACLS SSRC in 1989 or 88 or 89 when it was looking as though the Foundation was going to be the source of support for the many programs in China studies that had previously been supported by the Ford Foundation and the National Endowment for the Humanities, neither of which was going to support it anymore. And there was a great deal of discussion on the committee about whether this was a good idea. Well, fortunately, I think it was a good idea. We agreed to partner, and until 1996, for several years, until the dissolution of the committee, China studies in the United States was supported to a large extent through the ACLS SSRC Joint Committee. Since 2003, at ACLS, we've been privileged to collaborate with the Foundation on a program that funds planning meetings, workshops, and conferences. First in Chinese studies. We described it first as a program to support new perspectives on Chinese culture and society. And then in 2010, reformulated to support, to focus on comparative perspectives on Chinese culture and society. So we're moving in the direction that I think Professor Hsu has outlined for us as a goal, developing explicitly cross-cultural or comparative perspectives on China. And I think it's a very broad, it's a very illuminating lens, and one that, I think initially, it's fair to say, was a bit of a challenge for the field, but now the field itself is responding to it. I'd like to say, I think it's important, since we're celebrating anniversaries, the 30th anniversary of the Foundation, the 50th anniversary of the University Center for International Studies, that ACLS is having a birthday too. In 2019, we'll be 100 years old. And I think one of the things we're doing in connection with our centennial is looking back at our histories, and as you know, as a good humanistic impulse. And it's interesting to note that the promotion of China studies is something that is actually in the DNA of ACLS. That it was founded in 1919. At its first formal meeting the next year, the new council voted to pursue two projects. One was a biographical dictionary of American history, and the other was a discussion of methods of research and study of the history and civilization of the Far East, especially of China. So These discussions went on for several years, and in 1929, the Council Secretary proposed an articulated set of programs to promote China studies in the United States. And I just want to quote his argument, because I think it really anticipates many of the points that Professor Xu just made. Remember, this is 1929. In the domain of politics and economics, the large number of works daily coming from the press on current Far Eastern affairs and the activities of such organizations as the Institute of Pacific Relations demonstrate the growing realization of the truth of former Secretary of State John Hay's dictum that the world's peace rests with China. The fact, however, that the East in general and the Chinese world in particular has an important contribution to make in the humanistic and social sciences is now only receiving belated recognition. The immensity of this contribution can be suggested by the recital of a few pertinent facts. It has been estimated that prior to 1750, more books were published in Chinese than in all other languages combined. As late as 1850, Chinese books outnumbered those in any other languages. Even in 1928, the largest publishing house in the world is located not in New York, or London, or Paris, or Berlin, but in Shanghai. Indeed, it would be no very difficult task to maintain the thesis that in none of the world's civilizations has knowledge for its own sake played its prominent a part over so long a time as in that of China. It is evident, therefore, that if we are to hope for the final solution of our linguistic and philological problems, the satisfaction of our antiquarian or archaeological curiosity, and the construction of an adequate philosophy or a complete historical synthesis, we cannot disregard the lessons learned by a vigorous and intelligent people numbering 1/4 of the population of the globe through 3,000 years of continued and varied culture. Of all this have Occidental, and particular American scholars, only the slightest inkling. Now, hopefully we've made some progress in the past 90 years, but I think we need to ask, as Professor Xu has asked, what we can do over the next 90 years or the next 100 years, and what lies ahead for the foundation. I think it's Professor Xu's optimism regarding the possibility of forging one human civilization through the processes of economic and cultural globalization is a welcome counterpoint to the passions of this particular political moment. Globalization is indeed a powerful force, but we can see that it has also stimulated a backlash of nationalist resistance that can take ugly forms. And we find ourselves at a moment when even the affirmation that other societies and cultures are valuable in and of themselves and must be understood on their own terms can seem controversial, if not downright heretical. At this moment, we also confront a backdraft against expertise and knowledge and hostility to all forms of disciplined knowledge that might challenge powerful interests or powerful prejudices. And these developments, to my mind, provide all the more reasons for the Foundation to redouble its commitment to its ideals of high moral standards, self-knowledge, and self-discipline, the values that are cited in its own literature. I think it's important to realize that globalization and its noble mission of advancing the understanding, it's important to recognize that globalization is an important opportunity for a foundation whose mission is to advance the understanding of Chinese culture. Because it wasn't so long ago that globalization and the knowledge about a particular culture were seen to be as contradictory. I think we have been able to put to rest the idea that if the world is flat, we don't need to know anything about the particulars of its elements. And it's important to therefore be presented with a vision that unifies both recognitions. The late South Asian political scientist Suzanne Rudolph responded to critiques that area studies were passé by asserting that new patterns of transnational interaction didn't efface, but instead intensified the historic complexity of different world regions, and therefore the argument for studying them. She asserted that an intimate and intense learning about a particular civilization is one of the ways to overcome the powerful propensity to believe the other never changes and to understand instead both the genealogies of the local and its transformations. And I think enabling that understanding is at the core of our foundation's mission. Its first 30 years have established the CCK Foundation as a major force in advancing the understanding of Chinese history and culture. We owed a huge debt to Professor Xu for having envisioned and shepherded the CCK Foundation to its current robust state, and to Professor Cho-yun for his leadership in maintaining its high standards and forward-looking mission. As Professor Xu has made clear, there is much more to be done, especially from a comparative perspective. So the Foundation's work is far from over. We have much to teach, and we have even more to learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pauline, for your remarkable presentation. I also want to thank again Professor James Cook for giving me the privilege to say a few more words before closing. I still remember that I joined Foundation about 19 years ago. Believe me that at that time I was much younger. My gray was black, sorely. But really, feel very fortunate that I have been able to serve at this very important institution that fosters best scholarship in the field of sinology. I draw a great sense of gratification every time I walk into the Foundation office, which is in Taipei, which is very modest. Because, in the reception room of our Foundation office, we have a small bookshelf displaying all the latest publication and monograph and journal that we have received. And these are, the product, coming out of our grant making activity. So every day, when I walk into the office, there will be a few, right, have just been mailed in. It's such a, pleasant surprises, that when you open up the envelope and look over the title, and the acknowledgement, but most importantly, the content. And also, I acknowledge that, the way how those intellectual products eventually come out, it have traveled down a long pipeline with the dedication of those scholar and graduate students. They have really worked very hard. And we are very fortunate that we can be a partner of this scholarship. We don't have any, personally, I don't have any authority whether, the grant should be awarded to this particular recipient or that. Actually, the board, although, technically it does have the final say, but it never declined the recommendation sent up by our review panel. And review panel always defer to the assessment of the outside referee. So this is, actually, so basically, we work with the community at large in terms of, how we has been able to have this collect deliberation, what are the best and most promising project and proposal that deserving the award. But also that we have been able to really in eyewitnessing the maturing of younger generation, next generation scholar who from their doctoral candidate stage and gradually move up the ladder of their professional success. So really, I think it's such a wonderful experience, that you actually being able to do something in making this happen. As Pauline reminded us in her remark that we are indeed living in a challenging time. Especially me as a political scientist, I have to say I have never been so worried about the future of liberal democracy. I witnessed the popular backlash, not just against globalization, but also against the establishment. In many European countries, the existing party system and also the credibility of the representative democracy has been challenged by all kind of unconventional and non-mainstream movement and viewpoint. And also, I think the human being is also facing so many daunting challenges at present. On the one hand, we worry about the climate change, the ecological crisis forthcoming that might threaten the human being on this planet. And also, this planet is going to probably have more than 10 billion people at the end of this century. Imagine, how we are going to cope with, all the challenges that come with that. And also that we are on the verge of probably most profound technological breakthrough in so many important fields, the biomedical, and also robot, artificial intelligence, which is going to bring, on the one hand, so many promises to improve the quality of life, to live up the living standard for many more people. At the same time, they will definitely bring about very disruptive effect on society, community, and any other constituency that we really cherish. I remember that yesterday when I traveled from the airport to my hotel, I saw this self-driving car roaming around in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has been, it's been, a pioneer, right, doing this experiment. So I think this is really our calling in terms of, being humanity and social science scholar, to provide sound answer, deep thinking, and help the society to have a more intelligent, more balanced deliberation and discourses over those important choices, hard choices that before us. And with this in mind, I do think that the foundation was just play a very small part in facilitating the intercultural learning and dialogue, and also enable a lot of scholars to also to learn from the history of this long-running civilization. In so doing, we might be able to help a little bit in work with the entire humanity and social science community to cope with these daunting challenge that we and our children have to live with. Thank you all. Yeah. So I will conclude the symposium. And again, thank you all for your attendance. As Pauline, described it very correctly, this is also a kind of family gathering. So I want again thank University of Pittsburgh, the Vice Provost, Armony, and Professor Ching-kuo for co-hosting the event. We have some refreshment and beverage ready before the dinner time. So it's time for us, to relax and continue this meaningful conversation. Thank you. Yeah.
We can take the